Welcome back to Life, Liberty, and Real Talk. I'm your host, Luke, and I got with me today a cool guest out of Michigan, whose name also happens to be Luke. Luke has worked with high school baseball and basketball teams for a long time. He was a college basketball player. And today what we're going to talk about is participation trophies in youth sports and youth activities, and kind of how that's affecting society now that those kids who grew up in the era of participation trophies are getting older, and just like what, in our opinion, what needs to change and how that's affecting people. Luke, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. This is awesome. It seems like we haven't talked in a while, so it's pretty cool to get back with you.
Yeah, no, I'm pumped for this. Luke and I actually used to have our own little podcast that we tried to do for 2 solid episodes and one unreleased episode, but just couldn't find time to sit down and do it every week together. But glad to have you on. So, opening up with this, when we were kids, we were kind of just starting to really see a huge shift in the participation trophy and participation medal kind of thing, where, you'd go to a youth sports league or whatever, and at the end of the league, everybody would get a trophy or a medal, and you'd have a dinner and they'd congratulate everybody on the season and all that stuff. And what's that doing to kids now that we're all grown up? Like, what are some things that, in your opinion, you're seeing that you think might be a correlation to this kind of shift from, hey, you won, you deserve this, to, hey, everybody participated, you all deserve this?
Yeah, I feel like it's one word, and it's soft. And I don't say that in a way that it's like, hey, the world's getting softer, we're getting softer. But we were the first people that kind of saw these participation trophies come around. And when we were kids, if you watch it like a TV show from like before we were like our age, it was almost people made fun of that kind of participation. Hey, give away an award to everyone. And now it's like, hey, everyone gets it. Every kid that plays, even if you win first or last, you're still going to get something. And I think we're now seeing an effect as we get older. And I think that the world is just getting softer. And I don't think that, that translates to everyone in America, but we see a huge shift in people wanting things given to them instead of earning it. And, we're seeing this a lot of shift. We saw it a lot in the presidential election, and we just see it a lot in today's world where kids just want things and they don't want to earn it. And it's interesting because I remember Lou Holtz, who was a coach at a school you do not like in Notre Dame. He said hard work and determination is the only thing that gets it done. And I think that's true. And we're seeing that kind of shift away where it's, kids are kind of just given everything. You aren't earning it. You aren't working hard to get that. And so it's really, they just want it given to them. And these kids just want this stuff for free. And we just continue to see that. And now we're starting to see, repercussions of what is happening from getting these participation trophies, doing nothing and earning something from really not doing anything.
Yeah, I think, really when I started to see this come up as a conversation, more like mainstream wise, I think it was 2015, linebacker for the Steelers, James Harrison, if you remember him, he made his kids bring back their participation trophies. He made them return them because in his eyes, they didn't win. They didn't earn them. And I mean, the whole kind of thing with that is you don't get a trophy just for showing up. You're meant to show up. You're meant to show up. The reward comes when you go above and beyond to do more things. Like when you have a job, you don't get a raise just because you show up every day. You're supposed to show up. You're expected to show up. If you don't show up, you get fired. If you show up, That's the baseline of expectations. So then if you go above and beyond that in sports, you go to every practice, cool, that's expected. You decided to join a team. But then if you put in work outside of practice, your team gets better and you do win, yeah, you deserve a trophy. But I think there's just been this kind of surge or influx of this ideology that what used to be just expected of people, showing up, doing what you're supposed to do. It's almost thought of as like something to be celebrated. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I have a problem with it. Like when everyone gets a trophy, then all you're doing is making people entitled and lazy because they realize, oh, this person's going to go put in the extra effort to win in whatever sport you're talking about. I'm going to just sit here and do nothing and sit on my ass all day and show up to my minimum amount of practices and games and all that. And we're still going to get the same trophy. We're still going to get rewarded the same. And it turns people into entitled, lazy douchebags, quite frankly. I mean, there's always going to be winners and losers in life. Nothing's going to change that. There's always going to be someone that gets the job. There's always going to be someone who doesn't get the job. The person who got the job wins. The person who didn't get the job lost. When we give out participation trophies, we're ruining kids for the real world because they're not going to automatically get a job just for applying for that job. They have to be the best out of the group. And if they aren't, they won't get the job. But this failure can be used to do better in the next interview and pump you up to get better, become a better interviewer. I almost see it as like participation trophies is kind of also falls onto the parents too a little bit, like overprotective parents to get their way. Like overprotective parents have used participation trophies to ensure that their kid doesn't have to go through the pain of losing. Like, okay, sorry, your kid sucks. Maybe sports aren't their thing just because you think your kid's the next NFL star, even though they don't even know a football from a basketball. Like, just give up.
I think that's where the issue is. Especially working with youth in sports, it's really interesting because I've seen it firsthand. I've seen parents, I've had someone yell at me for not playing a kid. And I'm like, hey, I'm trying to win. That, at the end of the goal, it's the same thing in a company. A company's main goal is to sell the most, actually, I have no idea because I've never actually worked for a company. So I can't really attest to that, but I'd imagine it's to make money. And so if you're not making money and that person is causing you to not make money, you get rid of them. So if they're not doing their job, why would you have someone that you can have come in and is going to increase your sales or do a better job? Why not have that person come in and take your spot? It's the same thing with sports, and and now it's continuing, and we see it in sports, and then now it moves into the workforce as you get older. And with parents just wanting their kids to just have everything given to them, and they get frustrated when they're not given what they want, then they see that just in their eyes, and they don't see a problem with it. They don't see a problem with, hey, why am I not playing every time? So then as they get older and they get into past college and they get into the workforce, they're like, hey, I don't see the problem. This is how I grew up. Why am I getting in trouble for not doing my job? This is how I grew up. And I've seen it. I've seen it in the workforce. I've seen people just think, hey, I'm not doing anything wrong, when in reality, they aren't showing up on time. They aren't doing their job. They aren't doing it well. I mean, and they see no issue with it.
No, this plays in perfectly. The gym that I go to, I've made pretty good friends with the guy that kind of manages it, and he also is a personal trainer there, and he comes and works out with me like 1 or 2 days a week. And they just opened a new location that he's has direct responsibility for. And he had to hire all these front desk people for the gym. And he had to fire a kid not 3 weeks in to this new gym because they're on, the honor system. My friend Rob isn't there every day. So he can't tell, are they coming in time, whatever. So this dude, what he was doing, first of all, called out of his very first shift. Red flag. Second shift was an 8 a.m. to, I think, like 1 p.m. on a Saturday. Shows up at 9, leaves at, I think, 12:30, and still writes down on his timesheet that he was there from 8 to 1. Called out for his fourth shift or third shift, and then did that same thing for his fourth shift. And Rob looked on the video, and he's like, hey, man, look, I got to let you go. You're doing this, whatever. And the kid's like, well, what's the big deal? I left a half hour early. It's like, bro, you're literally stealing from this business. You are stealing 30 minutes every time you do that from this business. When you accepted the job, when you applied for the job, you are expected to work the hours that they tell you to work.
And they see no issue with it, which is the craziest thing.
He had no idea why he was fired. He said to Rob, he was like, dude, why are you overreacting to this? Like, okay, if I go into Walmart and I buy a pack of hamburger meat and then I steal the barbecue sauce to go along with the hamburger meat and I try and leave and they catch me, am I going to say, oh, but I bought the hamburger. I just figured I could have the barbecue. No, that's not how life works. You can't just steal time from people, you know, and these kids that
was one hell of an analogy.
These kids that grew up in this era of participation trophies and just celebrating them because they tried, like, gives you no motivation in life. If you didn't win, it should serve as motivation to work your ass off so that next time you can be on that podium on the first place spot. You know what I mean?
Well, and what worries me the most is, I mean, yes, we were the kind of the first generation of, hey, we kind of gave away these participation trophies. And so we see it a couple times in the workforce. But if you look at these kind of like small time, where like teenagers, like, you know, 15, 16-year-olds are starting to get jobs, you're starting to see it be more and more common. And it's because now everyone is brought to this, hey, participation, whereas only some of us were shown
we
kind
were
of
just the beginning of it.
And
it's going to get worse and worse and worse. I mean, I hired a kid for the app that I was doing. I hired a kid, he was a freshman in college, and I hired him just to be kind of like a sales support role when I was doing that app. And I had to fire the kid in like 2 weeks. He did not do his job. And I mean, it was partially my mistake because I said, record your own hours. I'll pay you $10 an hour. Just work here and there when you can. You know, I gave him too much leeway. So I fault myself for that too, for not realizing that I had to kind of have my head over his shoulder a little bit more. But I mean, when I'm running a business and I give you leeway, I expect you not to exploit that. You know, I'm being kind enough, I'm being cool enough to say, yeah, dude, you know what? Work your own hours. Like, I'm not going to be up your ass the whole time. Just get your job done and we'll be chill. And I would, you know, talk to him maybe like every 3-4 days, whatever. And he would kind of lead me on this path, like making it seem like he did all this stuff. And then I would go look into it more and I'd be like, why didn't this get done? Why didn't this get done? Why didn't this? It was easy stuff that the kid was doing. He wasn't selling anything. He was like prepping sales sheets or finding leads for schools. Literally all I had him doing for the first week, second week, and third week he worked for me was finding the emails and phone numbers of different people inside of different high schools. And it didn't happen. And like I said, partially that's on me because I just gave him too much leeway. But I mean, if you would have put me in that role, I would have gotten all of them day one. And my work ethic is a little bit more than your average person, humble brag there, but you still expect people to do more than at least the bare minimum. He didn't even do the bare minimum. Kids these days aren't even doing the bare minimum. They expect to get celebrated by doing the bare minimum. I don't know. I mean,
I agree with you 100%. And it's where do we draw the line? Because
exactly.
if we're going to start at youth sports, because everyone's pushing to do youth sports. So if we're going to, and obviously it's not just youth sports. It goes beyond this, but a lot of it is a lot of kids go into youth sports. So that's where we're seeing it. And that's where we're seeing a lot of this participation given. So if 85% of children are participating in youth sports and are getting all these participation awards and not having to work for playtime and cutting corners. If you cut corners now, you're going to cut corners later. It's really that simple. And if you're allowing to cut corners, it just is going to allow you to cut corners when you get to the workforce. I mean, I cut corners as a kid, and it took me a long time to figure out the habit of, hey, you got to work hard. That's the only way it's going to get it done. So thankfully,
I think it comes down to parenting too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I was a kid, don't get me wrong, what kid wants to go to practice every day for whatever sport they're doing? Unless you're just an absolute monster. When you're in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, you don't want to do that. But my parents said to me, look, if you don't want to do it, quit. But you signed up for it, so you're going to do it. If you're in, you're in. If you're out, you're out. None of this wishy-washy shit. And that forced me to go to practice every time. My dad would make me, hey, if this is something you want to do and you want to get better at, because I'd come home and I'd be like, oh, I'm not playing. And he'd be like, all right, get in the driveway and shoot hoops. Get better. Don't just do the minimum. Don't just show up to practice and then come back and complain about playing time. Go get better. By the time I got to high school, freshman, sophomore year, before I quit basketball, I had gotten better. I had earned more playing time because he pushed me to go outside of practice and work on my craft, work on shooting, work on dribbling, work on passing, work on court awareness, all that stuff. And that's not happening nowadays. You have these parents that come into coach and say, hey, why is my kid not playing? Well, because your kid sucks. Like,
it's really that simple. It really is.
Like, I'm sorry to say, sports might not be your kid's strong suit. I mean, I didn't play growing up hardly. Sports didn't really fall for me until high school, college, until I grew into my body and got somewhat athletic. But it's just the thing, you know, and the kids that played when we were in elementary and junior high, because they grew too quick, you know, now they're not the best at sports and not the most athletic. My only thing is I disagree with the participation trophy aspect. But in terms of equal playing time, I think that's where do you draw the line at that? Where do sports become competitive enough to not, because originally, you know, when you're young, everybody needs to play to an extent. Because when you're young, you're developing kids, you're just teaching them to love whatever game they're playing.
Right.
But at a certain point, and I think the cutoff was when I started playing club ball instead of like rec league youth ball. I think that should be the cutoff in my mind.
What age level is that?
I started playing club when I was 5th grade. It was more like state club. Then when I got to junior high, we started going to tournaments around the country. High school, or more like around the Midwest.
Right.
High school was when we really started to go tournaments around the country. But I think at a certain point, there are always rec leagues where everybody plays. I mean, shoot, I still play in a few today. You know, I'll play in a rec basketball league, and, you know, we all just play because, yeah, we want to win, but we're just doing it for fun. You know what I mean? And that, I think, is where parents need to step in and say, okay, my kid might not be the best at this sport, whatever sport they're playing. Maybe don't push them into going out for AAU ball or club ball and then go complain that they're not playing to the coach. Maybe that kid loves the game. Go tell him to go play rec basketball if he loves the game, or she, you know? It's just, where's that cutoff? I think it comes down to the parents. Every parent thinks their kid is an all-star. I probably will too when I have kids. So I need to be able to cognitively realize if my kid sucks at sports to just maybe not be a dick about it. But
Oh, your kid will be an all-star for sure. And if he isn't, I'm gonna train him. He'll be getting 7 days a week training if he's not an all-star. So he will be.
well, shoot, if you're coaching him, he's gonna suck or she.
No, I think it starts in middle school. I think once you hit to like 6th grade, 5th grade, I don't, every middle school is different in different states. But I
Ours
think
is
that
just 7th and 8th.
Okay, yeah. See, ours is 6th grade, so it really just depends. But when you hit to that middle school, because when you're playing that rec ball, there's still kids are still young, but as you get to middle school, kids are starting to grow. Like there's no reason that the best example I can give you is like Imani Bates. He's the #1 player in high school in the country. And in 6th grade, he was playing middle school basketball at 6'7" and was a point guard. Like that guy should not be splitting time with the worst player on his team. That just shouldn't happen. So I think that's where you start to see, because you start to see kids kind of grow in that 6th, 7th grade. 4th, 5th grade, you aren't really growing. You're still doing it for the love. But when you get to 6th, 7th grade, you're starting to see kids that's where they kind of start to make that first leap of, hey, this is a guy that has a chance. This other guy does not have a chance. I think that's when you kind of start to see that line draw. And I think that's when you need to make it where, hey, okay, we need to sit down and be like, hey, it's about winning now. Okay. Yeah. And these kids, and that's where it needs to drop. Because if we're just going to allow till 8th grade freshman year, then it's just going to be an issue in high school. Hey, why is my kid not getting equal playing time? I've seen that a bunch where kids have left schools and gone from a higher class, like a higher school, a larger school, and went to a lower school because they're not getting playing time.
See, and that's fine. If you want to go to a lower level where you are going to get playing time,
do it
by all means. But don't bitch in the current level that you're in, that you're not getting the playing time. And I think it plays in a lot to what we're seeing right now in the political sphere. This generation of like millennial, Gen Z, whatever that coagulation or cutoff is coming to the age now, their voting age, they're politically active, all this stuff. And I think entitlement in the way you were raised, the upbringing, not necessarily the way you were raised in terms of just by your parents, but the way you were brought up by society as a whole. And I think that's where we're seeing this influx of this resurgence of socialistic ideology in high schools and colleges and, younger 20s or late 20s, even people, because they're entitled and they want, okay, I don't necessarily want to go work hard for this. I think everything should just be equal. And I think if you work your ass off to become a millionaire, you should have to pay for me to go to college so that I can make no money because I got a gender studies degree. Well, I think that's a huge, huge reason. And I don't think people necessarily realize that instilling this mindset into kids at such a young age, when you're probably the most impressionable you'll ever be in your life, because you look up to anybody older than you for guidance. Well, I don't think people really understand how detrimental some of these ideas are for when people get, in their 20s. I don't think people realize it. And if you sit down and just look, okay, this is what happens when they're a kid. This is what a lot of people are pushing for right now. It correlates perfectly.
Yeah. One word that I've kind of been stuck on when I think about this is optional. And it starts at a very young age when you have optional practices. When it comes to sports, if you have optional practices, you're going to see a majority of kids not show up.
Well, for us, we had.
Right. No. Yes. There is the
optional open gyms because we weren't allowed to hold practice during certain times. But if you didn't go to those, you weren't seeing the floor.
Yeah. Well, there is those. Yeah. Hey, if you don't show up, you're pretty much never going to play again.
Yeah.
But I mean, I made the biggest mistake, and I think everything is a life lesson in life. But and you said earlier that I've coached and I'm coaching right now, but I held optional practices. And the first week I was like, hey, optional practice, don't come in. You guys are all whatever. And I have 2 kids show up out of 12. I do
See,
it.
but I think every once in a while a coach should throw that in.
Right. I
Because
think
then you can distinguish who
mm-hmm.
really wants to be there and who really doesn't.
I've seen
And I
kids that
think,
have never come in for an optional practice ever.
yeah, and I think even if there's a kid who maybe isn't as athletic, isn't as good, but is like right on the cusp of maybe seeing some playing time in whatever sport, and you hold an optional practice, and you have 3 kids show up, maybe 2 of them are your stars, and one of them is that kid who is right on the cusp, maybe doesn't see the floor very often, but could potentially be developed into a better player. I think that's their in right there. They're willing to put in the extra effort to come into an optional practice when none of the other kids are. They should see the floor. I think that's good to do sometimes, but I agree with you. Most kids nowadays, if it's optional, they're just not going to show up. Like where's the work ethic? When did that leave?
I shit you not. In 7th grade, we used to have optional practices on the weekends, and we had a kid that was a very good athlete. That he would never come to an optional practice, and he ended up not playing at all. His parents would not bring him, and then they were like, "Hey, why is my kid not starting?" Which he was probably better, but he didn't play. But you know what? He never showed up to an optional practice, so he didn't start. And as he got older and older, now he's 21 and never graduated high school, never, doesn't even work. And we're starting to see that more and more where kids are like, hey, I got all these optional things. My parents said, hey, I don't have to go to this. So then they started, now it came to school. Oh, I don't have to go to school. It's optional. No, it's not,
No, I agree. And like I said, everything boils down to the parenting in a lot of these aspects. And you feel bad for these kids that don't have parents present in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're coaching kids or when you're a teacher, you're gonna kind of be able to pick up which kids those are or not, because a lot of the parents will be involved in the team and all that stuff. So you'll be able to pick that part of it out, and you might have to nurture that kid a little more and be more, hey, you should come today. I'll pick you up. I'll give you a ride, all that stuff. But for the kids who have that quote unquote normal platonic family, mom and a dad both present, and the parents aren't urging them to go to these optional practices because they're optional. Like if I would have told my parents that there was an optional practice, they said, nope, it's not optional. You're there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure your parents were the same way with your dad being in athletics, his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't see how I could physically as a parent be like, oh yeah, no, you're fine. You don't have to participate in something that you signed up for and you said you were going to be a part of. That's fine. I think that's one of the biggest things too. It boils down to that. I just
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how this is going to be fixed. I mean, I think one logical solution would be maybe instead of participation trophies, put more emphasis on how the kids that won got there, Put more emphasis on, instead of just giving them a trophy, blah, 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 put more emphasis on the work they did before whatever competition and what allowed them to win. Participation trophies are like, they're ruining the art of competition and putting kids at a disadvantage in the real world. Stop handing out trophies and don't accept them if they're presented to you or your kid. And this will help society kind of get on the right foot and kind of work its way back. But the problem is, I think at this point, the ship has sunk. We're too late on the jump and it's never going to change. And that scares the shit out of me because it's only going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And we're going to see these ideologies of entitlement and no work ethic just get so much bigger exponentially as time goes on. Like the kids nowadays that are in elementary, junior high are going to be worse than the kids nowadays that are in high school right now who can't hold a job.
Oh, 100%. Well, and think about, I mean, we're both college kids. I mean, think about how, at least in my end, I've seen a bunch of people with like the stimulus checks coming out. Like they're like, oh, let's just take this free money. We don't have jobs, but I'll take this free money.
Yeah.
Like that's all they want.
Free money.
Well, yeah,
pay back.
yeah, they can't figure out that part, but one step at a time. But it's very interesting. All these people and they get pissed off. Hey, I don't get this free money. Well, I mean, first of all, just go get a job. Like, I mean, it's really not that hard. If you can't find a job, I get it. But if you're just wanting to go out and get this free money, because we're seeing, the countless amount of college kids that I saw going from this pandemic that are like, hey, I just want this free money, and haven't even applied to try and find a job, and they're just trying to live. They just try to live off unemployment. I mean, it was almost everyone. And I'm like,
that's what I don't get. I mean, since freshman year of college, even throughout high school, I've worked 40-hour weeks in the summer. I worked 20-hour weeks during the school year. I started my own business freshman year. That took up probably 30 hours a week. I still got my schoolwork done. I was able to start a profitable business, sell it, still had my part-time job on the side. Now I work full-time for a digital marketing firm while I'm going to school, while I'm starting a trucking company. And don't get me wrong, that is like above and beyond. I get that. But if I'm able to do that and still keep a social life, still maintain relationships with my family, relationship with my girlfriend, all of this stuff, like, is it hard? Do I have to make sacrifices? Every day, every single day. Like, today's a Saturday. I've been in the office all day. But if you're not willing to, I like this quote, and I think this really resonates with what people need to start getting in the, more in the hang of, is take responsibility outside of your authority. When you're in a job, if you're looking to get a promotion, go to your superior. Hey, what can I do to help you out today? Like, I've got all my work done for the day. What can I do to make your life easier? What can I do on top of what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, I think of it like this too. We're in an office building right now. If I see that the bathroom's dirty, I'll clean it. And it'll be as clean as it will ever be, ever.
You can lick those toilet seats.
If the trash is full, I'll take it to the dumpster. Just little things like that. Take pride in what you're doing and do it to the best of your abilities. Don't expect everything to fall into place if you're not willing to work your ass off to get there. And I'm not even talking about like doing what I'm doing. I'm talking about just dial it up a notch. Okay, you're supposed to show up for work every time you're scheduled. Maybe pick up an extra shift once a month. Maybe stay after your shift and offer to clean or help pick up. Let's say you work at a bar, your shift gets over at 2, offer to help clean before you leave. Most people do that anyway because they're supposed to, but you know what I mean? Just dial it up one notch. People will notice. I think in sports too, this kid who we're family friends with, and I work out at his property. He's been all the last couple of years. He's a junior in high school now, and he plays football, and he doesn't play. And he always complains to me about how he doesn't play. And this year, I've been just getting on him. He has a gym 2 steps from his house that he never uses. So during quarantine, I was like, dude, come work out with me every day. Come get better. I said at practice.
Well, I said you were taking the quarantine well.
I said, when you're on the field, when you're doing anything, work your ass off. Work harder than anybody else on that field. Your coaches will notice. And you know what? He started doing that. And guess what? He started to get in the game. Yeah, it was for special teams, but it's a start. He saw no playing time. Now he gets in 5, 6, 7 plays a game, whatever. And I told him, I said, dude, look. And he keeps telling me to come to his games, and I've come to a few. And I was like, look, if you get to the point where you're consistently playing and you're consistently getting in the game, because I'll know that means you put in the extra effort, I won't miss a game. And that was the motivator for him because he looks up to me. He's grown up with me being like an older brother figure because he has a sister. And I just keep pushing him and pushing him and pushing him. And finally, he's been putting in the work. He's starting to get more playing time. Coaches are starting to notice, and he's going to start playing more. Next year's his senior year. he might see the field a lot because he's started taking it seriously and doing more than the minimum amount of effort. And that's what people don't realize.
It's not that it's something I've always told like the kids that that I'm coaching. It's not why, it's what. It's not why am I not playing? It's what can I do to play more? That's something when I was playing in college. There was a time that I just wasn't getting on the court, and I was like, why am I not playing? Like I'm thinking to myself, why am I not playing? And so I didn't go to the coach and say, hey, why am I not playing? I said, what can I do to get more playing time? He said, you're not practicing hard in practice. So, okay, it's that simple. So same thing in the job force or in the workforce. It's not why am I not getting a promotion? What can I do to get a promotion? And I think that is really what it boils down to. It's not why, it's what. And I think people need to start figuring that out. Hey, I mean, everything's not going to be given to you. I mean, as much as you might want it to be that way, and I know a lot of people in America do want that to be, hey, I just want everything given to me. But it's not how it works. Hard work and determination is the only thing that's going to get it. That is what is going to get it done.
Man, I agree. And to wrap this up a little bit, I think it boils down to the parenting first and foremost, and just keeping people accountable, keeping yourself accountable. It's not that difficult. You know inherently what you're supposed to be doing. Just do it. Just go out and do what you're supposed to do. If you want to just skate by in life, fine. If that's where your comfort level is, that's perfectly okay. But don't complain that you're not getting ahead. Mm-hmm. If you want to get ahead, you go above and beyond. That's that.
It's really that simple. It's the craziest thing.
Anything else for us, Luke?
I don't. It's really that simple. And I think you really hit it on there. You hit it on the head for sure.
All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate you hopping on today. I wanted you to record this one with me because of the fact that you work with, youth sports all the time, and I appreciate your insight. If you like the show, give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Life Liberty RT. Until next time, this is Life, Liberty, and Real Talk.
To be from the U.S., where at least I know I can run free. I'll never forget the man who died just to get that right to me. Staying tall for my brave ones, Republicans since day one. I caught the P with my Trump check. You Democrat, I can't fuck with that. Put on for my soldiers, though they had to swear me in. Young, humble motherfucker, but my hustle arrogant. Got it all off the muscle like I'm damn Bilzerian. Make the trap great again. I'm a proud American. I'm a proud